I looked at the alcohol, I looked at the drugs, and for the first time in my life, I could see that was causing the problem. I realised now that was just a symptom of my greater problem. You know, the alcohol wasn't the problem. That was what I was using to suppress the problem.
I think this is really gold. Alcohol was not the problem, but you used alcohol to suppress a bigger problem, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's just start.
Welcome to a new episode of the Bridging Podcast.
Tomorrow is going to happen whatever we do. Is it better to go into tomorrow trusting a voice, a practice, process, a way forward? Or is it better to go into tomorrow filled with fear and not believing the things that have gotten you here so far?
Create a new reality. I close my eyes and I will be there. I will dream it. Welcome everyone on the new episode of the Bridging Podcast, where you can learn and transform in any area of your life if you practice what we actually teach here. I am so privileged to be together today with Kevin Collins. Kevin is an addiction therapist and personal development coach. For the past 20 years, he has helped thousands of people to recover from any addictions. He has developed a program that teaches people how to overcome problems with addiction, negative thinking, food, relationship, sex, and alcohol. He's also the author of the ultimate life-changing workbook, Change Your Thinking and Change Your Life. Kevin, welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Özlem. I'm grateful to be here and privileged that you asked me to come and share with you today. Thank you.
Really, really nice to have you here. We actually have a common friend, which brought me in touch with you a few years ago when you were working in an addiction center in Thailand. And that was the first conversation we had, and now we are back. So my first question is actually, how do you introduce yourself to people that say, what do you do actually?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll just give you a bit of background how I got, I got to I'm a recovering addict myself. For over 20 years, I haven't had any drink or drugs, so that was the catalyst for helping people. That's why I.
So you were a drug addict for 20 years, you say?
No, it was. No, I'm clean and sober now for 20 years, 20 plus years.
Okay, sorry.
So
Yep.
I was using probably drugs and alcohol for 15 years, from my teenage years up to 30 when I stopped. And so I introduced myself. I niche myself as an alcohol therapist and personal development coach. So that's what and people ask me. They always ask me what I can do for them. But when they first come on the telephone or we first communicate, they say, "What can you do for me?" And I always put it back to them. I say, "I'm only as good as you. If you're good at implementing the tools and techniques that I teach you, you'll do very well. But if you don't do that," I says, "I'm going to be a lousy therapist." So it's down to the individuals. When they come, they always ask what my success rate is, and I says, "You're my success rate." I says, I'm only the torch. I shine the torch, and you do the work." I says, "And if you and as I've said, as long as you do what I say, you'll stay clean and sober." But that's the $1 million question. The people that do fail and don't are not successful at beating their addictions is because they don't follow the plan. That's the reason for it.
So can you talk us a little bit through the stage of your life when you were an addict? So what happened that you became, addicted, and what made you actually stop, and you actually even transformed it to become an addiction therapist?
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a journey. So you walked actually what people that you are helping are walking through.
Yeah.
You walk that path
Yeah.
yourself.
It's a very good question, Özlem. I actually found personal development first. When I was in my addiction, when I was in my addiction, I never knew I had an addiction. There's a thing called denial. It's self-deception. And you don't realise you're an addict. You know, you think you just justify everything. So I knew there was something up with my life. I was feeling low, I was depressed, and it wasn't going the way I wanted my life. So I sought out, I went to a life coach called Jack Black, Mind Store. It was about back in 1998, and I heard it on the radio, and it says if you want self-esteem, confidence, you want to live the life of your dreams, and I just had this urge when I was in the car to get to a telephone. It was the time before the mobile phones and stuff like that. I had to go to get home, and I phoned up the radio, and I says, "Put that course, that man doing the course in Glasgow at the weekend, and can you give me the number?" And they give me the number, and I phoned it up, and this man, Jack Black, I went and done. They give me a discount on the course as well, and that was my first leap into personal development. The man taught me for the first time in my life. He taught me that it was me that controlled my mind. It was me that put the stuff into my mind, and it was and he showed me techniques, kinesiology, and using positive, negative words, and how to goal set, about eating. He went into eating and all the rest of it. It was all alien to me. And I was just there looking for a path to a better life, to get out of this kind of rut I felt I was in. And on that course, I wrote 30 goals. 30 goals I wrote for the first time in my life. And he told me, when I was doing these 30 goals, he says, only 5% of the planet, the people in the world, write their goals down. He says, and they 5% control the world. It was a personal development course. There was 10,000 people there in the Royal Concert Hall in Glasgow. Yes. And he taught me
10,000 people.
Yeah, and he taught me how to control my mind, how to visualize, how to meditate, and he taught me how to goal set, how to write goals, how to control my mind, how to achieve my goals, and taught me sleeping techniques, addiction, habit breaking techniques as well, and on that course, and so that was my introduction to personal development. But I realised I was on that course to I was on it to enable me to continue drinking the way I was, but to take all the pain away. I realise that now. Mm-hmm. I was on the course for the wrong reason. But that was my personal development journey. That's where it all started. And it was using that technique that I discovered. I remember I went to my grand's grave in Scotland. I went to my grand's grave, and I said to her, I just said a simple prayer. I says, I don't know what's up with me. I says, but can you please help me? And that was a prayer. And I ended up in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting a couple of weeks later.
Alcohol Anonymous meetup? Did you say that?
Yep. I ended up there, and it was with a friend of a friend that took me there. Yeah, and I never knew. And for the first time, I admitted, I looked at the alcohol, I looked at the drugs, and for the first time in my life, I could see that was causing the problem. I realised now that was just a symptom of my greater problem. You know, the alcohol wasn't the problem. That was what I was using to suppress the problem.
Can you please repeat that? I think this is really gold. Like alcohol was not the problem, but you used alcohol to suppress a bigger problem underneath,
yes,
right?
Yes. And I never knew that at the time. It was just an unfolding, I just unfolded. I was starting to wake up and become awake, become aware. Starting from Jack Black's course teaching me about how my mind worked, I always believed things happened to Kevin. I never believed Kevin created everything. And now I was starting to realise it was my behaviour that was creating everything. And instead of the world, I was the victim in the world. And if you're a victim, you can do nothing about it. You remain a victim.
I want to ask something about that, Kevin. Like you said, like you realized that your behavior was creating something. Like you were able, or you were the one that was controlling the mind. Like I can imagine some of the watchers on YouTube or listeners, they might think like, hey, it can be a really big confrontation. I had it myself. I know that. Like, when I did a course 8-9 years ago, I was like, ooh, I'm not responsible. No. These were my parents. This was the circumstances, my boss, my relationship, so on. How was it for you to realize that? Like, what do you go through when you realize these things?
It's just an unfolding. If I'm working with an addict, if I put my mind inside someone that is just trying to get sober and clean and change their life, it would explode. It literally like a bomb, it'd explode. It happens bit by bit, stage by stage, unfolding. The learning's got to take place over a period of time, and the change has got to develop with new habits and new behaviours, new friends, new job, working on your self-esteem, your confidence, your self-worth. There's no like one thing that you do. It's a combination of things that needs to be done, in order to achieve the end result. But people come and they expect to get the microwave recovery or the microwave life, and they say, oh, I try this meditation and it's not working for me. And I say, you expect to do 1-2 time and your life changes, or 1-2 weeks. Pain equals, if you don't go through pain, you can't grow. It's just simple. It's just, that's the way it is. If you're going to change and give up an addiction that's controlling you and giving you a bit of respite, and you're using it as a crutch to feel better, you give that up, there's a certain amount of discomfort and sometimes really excruciating pain. And then you've got the other side of the pain where the real problem is maybe a trauma. It's maybe trauma or self-esteem or maybe a loss that's maybe been the catalyst for the addiction. There's maybe a combination of certain things. So that's pain. When you have to face these deep traumas and deep and losses in your life, that causes pain. But the other side of that is where the joy is. Once you face that and work through it and grow through it, the joy comes. So now my life's really, it's mostly joy, mostly happiness, because I've worked through the pain. And if I get new pain in my life, I don't run away from it and pick up a drug or an alcohol. I go and I use some of my tools, or get some of my friends and do some work. And it's constant, personal development's not for one day or 1 week. It's for a life. It's a new lifestyle, and that's what that's what I do now. Instead of go to the pub and go with my friends and use drugs, I now go and meditate, and I use my tools and work on my self-esteem and try to love myself more each day and stuff.
So, I actually want to ask about, before you went to the personal development course back in 1998, which maybe then was not really in the face of other people. Now it's everywhere, personal development, right? You can see it anywhere, everywhere. It almost became a hype. maybe it is a hype. So I want to ask this, like, for the people that are listening and watching this, like, you did not first realize it was an addiction until you got there. You were like, "Hey, addiction," but how would you define as a addiction therapist addiction? When does become something? When would you call something addiction?
When it's causing you a lot of pain and unmanageability in your life, like someone that's overeating, when that person gets to a certain size and, maybe the health issues kick in and they can't, they can't do certain things a fit, slim person would do. They do something about it. Again, it's pain. It's you hit your rock bottom. Anyone in their addictions needs to hit a rock bottom, and that rock bottom equals pain. And that's what happened to me. And with that pain, it usually wakes you up, gives you a level of self-awareness, and you actually see the problem instead of deny the problem. Because these people that are overeating and over drinking and over gaming and over vaping and over smoking, they actually don't believe they've got a problem. This is the thing. It's like they have to accept they have a problem. If you go and ask someone that's clearly got an addiction problem in whichever area, overworking, they'll probably tell you they don't have.
What is usually the underlying things? That big picture you said, like, it was never about alcohol. It was like something that was underlying the alcohol that was solved by alcohol. What are the common things? Is it like the traumas we have had in our childhood, or anything? Gabriel Maté talks a lot about this, our traumas, and also how easily things are called trauma while it is not even a trauma. So what would you say to that? Like, why is the covering of, like, with alcohol, with sex, with drugs, with overeating, with it's sometimes undereating with some women,
Sure.
that have eating disorders. So what is usually underlying? That is my first. And then let's say we notice that, we realize, we kind of acknowledge to ourselves, this is really going on in me. What could be a next step to take? But first of all, what is underlying?
Yeah. So the underlying, that's when someone comes to me and they give me their story, they give me their big I am a victim story, and the first thing I'm looking for, I get them to do a wheelie life. I get them to do a wheelie life, their relationships, their work, their hobbies, and I get them to mark themselves from 1 to 10 in this wheel of life. There's like 10 different environments you're living in, and I say, look, you can't be a 10 because we've got to progress. I say, so anything between 1 and maybe 8 or 7, I want you to mark yourself because we need to make progress. So they'll mark it, and sex life's one of them, and and then they mark that, and then ask them to now add all the points up, and then I look at that wheel of life, and you can zero in if they've been honest. If they've been honest with the wheel of life, you can zero right in and where the problems in their life are lying. Is it work, their sex life? Is it they spend too much time on their own and So I start fishing for where, and I start asking a few questions about their childhood and their work life and in the areas that they score weekly on. So if they're scoring like 1 or 2 on the wheel of life, I'm going to zero in the area. I'm going to zero in that area to see where we can improve it. And if we can improve that area and bring that number up to maybe a 7 or an 8, maybe in relationship, sex life, environment, work life, self-esteem, I'm looking to improve these areas. So, but for your specific question, a lot of them are different. Like some of them are self-esteem, Some of them are self-sabotaging and self-esteem. Some people have got relationship issues, you know, underneath the addiction. Some of them have got deep traumas, like being sexually abused and really deep traumas. You know, some of them have had bad childhoods, been brought up in a bad home, you know, and so I'm zeroing in the areas. So masked on top of this is an addiction problem, an overeating, undereating, drug and alcohol or gaming. You know, sex addictions is huge now too. Underneath that, that's just a label. That's just the symptom. I'm not interested in their symptom. I really mean that. I'm listening to them what they're saying, but their symptom. But I'm looking for the problem, the belief, the core belief, and belief, and so I'm digging deep. I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm drinking too much. But why are they drinking too much? Is the low self-esteem, the trauma from the past, the sexual abuse that they received as a child, the skeletons in the closet. You know, they've all got skeletons in the closet that they're going to take to the grave with them. I want the ones that they're going to take to the grave with them. I want those secrets, and that's what I'm digging for. And that's how we'll improve all the areas and get the wheel a bit more balanced. We go for a balanced wheel. Instead, it's all jagged. We're bringing their low scores up. But that's my initial session with any addict. I give them that wheel of life, and then I work from there, and then I give them exercises to do, like meditation, visualization, little belief exercises and stuff, and start to improve them.
So, but that's the moment actually when they come to you, or when they do any, you know, other treatment with someone else, they just go through all these things. But how would they, if they feel that they are an addict in anything, and how could we actually take really the first step? Because somehow we are suffering. That's why we are covering it with, I'm talking about like in general, with, you know, any alcohol, anything, overeating, whatever it is. And then because we cover that pain, but then when you go to work with someone, with a addiction therapist, or with any therapy, with a personal coach, with whatever, you're like, hey, but I'm going to actually go through more pain. Why should I? Well, you know, you have a problem. So then my question arises there. Why do we keep self-sabotaging ourselves?
It's addiction again, because we're addicted to our thinking and addicted to these negative behaviors that we've built up over the year. Again, it's addiction. You know, we're addicted to these thought patterns. I think the mind thinks 90% of the same stuff day in, day out. So, you know, if we don't change the way we think, basically nothing changes. You know, we have to bring in these new tools and techniques to manage our minds. It all centers in the mind. You know, we're addicted to certain things in our life, like we're out of keel. As I say, the wheel of life, we're out of balance. We're all family, we're all relationship, we're all sex, we're all friends, we're all, you know, work is another one. You know, we're all eating and stuff. The human being is just, the mind's a natural self-sabotaging. The mind's the enemy. The mind is the enemy. We have to, it all centers in the mind. Addiction all centers in the mind. And we have to have this psychic change in the mind, a change of behaviors and attitudes. If we don't have that change of behaviors and attitudes, you're never going to change the mind, because the mind doesn't stop. The mind don't stop. It's got to be a concerted effort. And if you're not prepared to face the pain and put the work in, put the action in, use the tools and techniques on a daily basis, the mind will never change. the mind will just go on habitually like it always has, and you'll keep doing the same things over and over and over until you change.
So what is, for example, the first few steps we can all take in order to have more control over our mind that will keep always going, but directed towards directions which is healthy for us, less addicted or not addicted at all, and that we really experience joy? What could be the steps there?
Very simple. Just sit down and do a mantra each day. You know, a mantra is something you can say, like it can be an affirmation. You just control your mind for a few seconds each day. You know, that's what I say. Just 30 seconds, and then do a mantra, and then you could maybe get into a bit of breathing, and then you can get in looking at your values. The values is what your core beliefs are. You know, you look at what you value. I look into people's values as well. So yeah, so we just keep working, you know, to change your mind by using tools and techniques. You know, breathing exercises. Once your mind becomes a bit more settled, because when you first start these exercises, your mind goes crazy. Your mind goes, people say, "Oh, Kevin, my mind's going crazy, you know, I can't do it." And I say, just stick with it. I says, your mind's been doing that for how many years? You know, how old are you? 30? I says, it's been doing it for 30 years. Come on, give it a week or two to see if you progress. And that's what I'm encouraging them to, you know, try these techniques for a while. And I can guarantee them, if 100%, if they use the techniques, they'll feel better. They'll feel joy, because it's only the mind and the thinking and the habitual behaviours that are taking them away from their joy. Our natural state, when they deal with the traumas or the stresses, and there are more stresses for a lot of people in their life, and get a bit of balance with it, they basically they'll experience happiness. Naturally, they'll experience happiness. That's it. You know.
So what you're saying was, like you said, you can do a mantra daily. You can look at your core values. What are my core values? And do my core values actually align with the life that I'm living right now?
Correct.
I mean, does it really match with each other? And you said breath work. You called like breathe. Just breathe through it. And I think one very important thing what you said is stick with it. We know that most people, not all of them, when they start meditating the first time, even 2 minutes, it's like my mind goes crazy. It just comes and goes and comes and goes. But like, stick with it. Stick with it, like you have sticked with it for the past 30 years with the addiction or with anything what was going through. And look, I also really don't want to devalue what people have gone through, because there are people out there that have been really traumatized, as you just said in the beginning. But that's also, your mind is also doing that brings it back into addiction. But why not using that mind for other things that you actually would like to experience, I would say.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. You've just got to persevere and persistence. If you want to, I tell in my first session, I'm honest with my clients. I say, look, if you're going to come into this half-hearted, you are not going to beat your addiction. I'll tell you that right now. And I even scare them, and I say, look, some people don't get a choice. Eventually, your addiction takes your life. Ultimately, it comes for your life. And I've lost family members. I've lost close friends. I've been to too many funerals because they can't beat their addiction. So I kind of scare them into it, and I tell them, if you're going to come into this half-hearted, you're not going to do it. You're not going to make it. It's got to be an effort. It's got to come deep within. The effort has got to come from your heart. You've had enough. You're at rock bottom and you want to rebuild your life. And if you've got that attitude, you'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah, like don't be half in it, but just give it your all. Give it your all. Give it your all. Be just there with me when you work with me. Okay, so your book, Change Your Thinking and Change Your Life. Can you tell us a little bit more about the way we can change our thinking? Like, it's always easier to hear it than to apply it. I mean, how can we change our lives by changing our thinking?
Because change your life, if you change your thinking, you can change anything in your life. But first of all, I need to say that trying to control the mind and the mind alone, you can't control a thought. You can't control a thought. What the Hazelden, Betty Ford Hazelden. It's the psychologists in Betty Ford Hazelden. It's like the alcohol and drug addict of the USA that have eventually started coming round and saying that what they're into EMDR. It's EMDR, emotional. I forget what the abbreviation is, but anyway, what it basically is the feelings, the thoughts, the programs are the feelings. The program is the feeling, and that stimulates the thinking. So they've started to use shock therapy, like it's little balls you hold in their hand, and they get people to think the negative trauma, the negative whatever, and they use tapping techniques and they use shocks, the EMDR, they use shocks to kind of break the pattern of the negative thinking. But what that does, it dissipates the feeling, it takes the feeling out, and then the program's no longer there, so the thinking disappears. And this is EMDR, and I use a thing called thought field therapy. And this deals with the core beliefs, the core traumas, and basically that's what it does. It interrupts the trauma. I don't need to know the trauma, but they have to think it in their minds and experience it, and I do techniques to take the trauma away. So that's where our thinking, it doesn't just come from nowhere. It can come from outside. I can be influenced from people in my environment, my surroundings, but the ones that causes problems in our lives, they're feelings stored in our body. And Betty Ford Hazelden, the main addiction organisation in the USA, are now recognising this. I've known this for years, but they're actually teaching their psychologists and therapists EMDR and thought field therapy to attack the mind at its core, which is the feeling. Take the feeling away. That's the program. That's your hard drive, is the feeling.
Oh, that's really good. Take the feeling away. Take the program away. Did you say that?
Yes. Take the feeling away. You take the program away. You take the defect away. It's gone, and it stops coming in the mind. That's the way. And psychologists are now understanding this. But 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I went to Mind Store, Jack Black, they never knew this stuff. Jack Black taught me this stuff 25 years ago, and only in the last few years, maybe 10 at most, has psychology started to accept that our thinking centres in the feelings. They're our program, they're our hard drive. So that's the most core. We've got the other tools and technique, breathing and mantras and stuff, but the most potent technique that I use is the one I've just explained.
Okay. So how can people get in touch with you, Kevin? Like, can you just give some more details?
I've got a young family now, which is really good, so I haven't been, I'm only seeing a couple of clients at the minute, and I'm only doing a couple of days therapy. So they can get a hold of me on on Facebook, on London for Addiction. If they type in London for Addiction, I'll come up on Facebook. It's a shame my website, I've took it down at the minute because I had a lot of free stuff and ebooks and stuff like that. And I hope to get that up and very soon again. And then I've also at LinkedIn. I'm on there too. You can, if you want to read about my experience.
LinkedIn, okay. So what is your LinkedIn, Kevin? What is your LinkedIn?
Just Kevin Collins. Kevin Collins.
Kevin Collins. Okay. We will put your Facebook page and LinkedIn on the episode notes for the ones that are interested in getting in touch with you. I'm sure, if there's anything, just write Kevin, just get in touch, please. I have the last few words for you, Kevin. That is like, I will just give you some words. You can answer with one word or one sentence. So whatever pops up at that moment. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
Okay. Overcoming addiction.
Take the first step and put your heart and soul into it, and you can do it.
Trauma.
Trauma is face the fear and work through it, and you'll experience joy.
Pain.
Pain is not a negative thing. It can be positive too. We have to experience it in order to grow.
Growth.
Growth is only happens with effort and perseverance.
Altruism.
Altruism is given to other people, takes you away from yourself and gives you joy and happiness.
Thank you so much. From the bottom of my heart, Kevin, I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I hope the watcher and listener did too. Thank you so much for watching, listening. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.